Hello creatives! Welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela, a graphic designer and an illustrator, as you all know, for anyone who is new here. Hi! Today we are going to be in InDesign and I'm going to show you how to create a really cool tech display piece. I'm going to add some principles of design in there for you so you can utilize it for any pieces that you want to put in a display case or up on your wall. So I have my document dimensions and information right here. This one is 14 by 11 in a landscape orientation with a 4-column grid. It's just 4 columns. We just call it a 4-column grid with 1/2-inch margins all the way around. I'm going to name this Tech Teardown Display. There we go. Create. And here we are. So we have one display page here with 4 columns in it. All of our information on the right under the properties panel. If you cannot see your properties panel, it is up here under window on the top taskbar. Go down to types and tables towards the bottom, and then you can see all the types and tables and window screens that you need to be able to visibly see to be able to create your stuff. So that is all there. I also have a secondary page, which is down and over here. And we're going to create some fun, nostalgic tech teardowns. A tech teardown basically is anything that is a piece of tech that you want to disassemble and showcase. So I have all of my old iPhones. I kept all the boxes. There are not all the phones in here because I've had to trade some in. This is the current one I'm using. This is the iPhone 13. I had the iPhone XR before that, but the iPhone XR had to trade in, so I no longer have it. And I had the iPhone SE first generation. Now, this one I still do have. This is my old iPhone SE. Look how beautiful that is. The front's not very beautiful, which is why it got replaced. It's all cracked. I don't know if you can see that. But the screen's all cracked. It's got some cracks, some chips in it, but I've had them and I want to display them in a beautiful way. So we're gonna do that. Whenever you start to create stuff like this, you always need to know what your end size is. Did a little research and I chose an 11 by 14 display frame size with a black frame edging around it, which is gonna look really good. So I'm going to start with some images that I already pulled. I also have all my information. See, my layers panel's over here on the left. Create 2 and name my layers right now. Always name your layers. It's a great habit to get into. I don't want this one to be light blue. You can change the color of your layers while you double click in on the layer name to change the layer name. Works just the same in any of the programs. Ooh, there's a gold. Let's do gold because my iPhone SE was gold. Show guides, yeah, this is perfect. Double click on layer 2. This is going to be iPhone XR. I do have the new iPhone 13. However, I'm not going to create a display case for that yet. I want to save that for when I get a new phone. My iPhone XR is Starlight, right? Was it Starlight? It says so on the back of the box. iPhone XR, white. Okay, it was just white. My iPhone 13 is Starlight. My iPhone XR was just white. All right, well, there is no white, so I'm going to choose a light gray for this layer. Well, there is a white, but what's the point in that? You won't be able to see it. Let's just use light gray. iPhone SE is the one we're starting with, so let me import all my photos, go to File, Place. I have a keyboard shortcut for this. Use your keyboard shortcuts, they will help you. You can choose multiple photos to import at one time or to place at one time. They will pop up like this, where it has the first image you chose to import or place, and then it has the number of photos that you have holding. So I'm gonna place them. 1, 2, 3, and 4, running off the page here. There we go. I grabbed quite a few. There's lots of space around these images with the little A9 chip because it had an Apple A9 chip in it. This phone was released in 2016. I want this to display quite easily. Can I pull this bounding box in here? It's kind of weirding me out that my container boxes are not blue because I changed that. Because normally the container boxes are blue. To resize anything, you're gonna hold down Control and Shift and just click and drag. If you do not hold down Control and Shift, you just hold down Control, it'll disproportionately resize it. And if you just hold down Shift, it just cuts off anything that you resize it down to. So hold down Control and Shift, or I believe it's Command and Shift on a Mac. I want this uplifting display picture to be the center of this. So I'm going to put that in the center. I'm going to have that one down there for now. Let's move this one up. Use your align tools to keep your images aligned either centrally or off to the side, whichever you choose. I'm going to align centrally to the artboard. Make sure that this icon or align to page is selected here under the align section in the properties panel. You can also align it to a selection or to the margins. The margins are the inner line here on the page that happened. We have our emphasis here, which is this middle picture. There is this tear down internal picture here, which I really like. I wanted to showcase all the gadgetry inside. We love technology over here. Make that smaller. If you double click into the container box, you can select the actual image, which is inside the container. So in InDesign, there is a container box. Inside the container box holds whatever imagery there is. When you double click into the container box, you're selecting the image. When you are selecting an item on the screen, it is selecting the container box. Those are the differences. You can take this, move it into any other format that you want within the, like if you wanted to take it off the corner here, just like so, you can within the container box, and the container box holds it for you. Double click into this one and just rotate this so that way it's not so much at a diagonal. We have a nice equal balance happening here. There's going to be a lot of information in here as well. I'm going to drop a guide. The way to drop a guide is to make sure your rulers are turned on, and you can find your rulers under View, Grids and Guides. There will be an option to hide rulers or to show rulers depending on if they're turned on or turned off. The way to pull a guide once your rulers are shown is just to click anywhere in the ruler, whether it's the top ruler or the side ruler, to bring down a guideline. And you can change the color of the guidelines if you wish. Choose our type tool, drop in a text box by just clicking and dragging. I'm going to click and drag up here to the top. iPhone SE. That text is very tiny. Come over to our properties panel. Once it's selected, I want a nice sans serif font like Futura. Futura would be a good one, or Futura, however you want to say it. Increase it to 30. iPhone SE. And if you are ever unsure of how things are looking within your design, you can always go to Window, Screen Mode, Preview, and that way you can see it without all the grids and guides and everything in your way. When it comes to design, having white space is not a negative thing. I mean, white space is negative space, but it is not something that you should fill up completely if that's not the look you're going for. I'm going to leave a lot of white space here because I love how minimalistic that feels. And technology, while being very congested, can also be very minimalistic, which is kind of like the theme of the iPhones. For my secondary font with all of the information that will be in it, choose my type tool, make a text box. Specifications. I am hoping I spelled that right. And instead of it being in something that's going to be heavy or very ornate, I'm going to have it more in almost like a typewriter type of font. There is a font I had that would be really good for this. OCR A Extended. That looks nice. You know, I'm going to use that one. I'm going to hold down Alt and click and drag to make a duplication. I believe it's Option on a Mac. Don't quote me though, I haven't worked on a Mac in a little bit. Whenever you're trying to choose a font for a design, make sure that the font represents what the subject matter is. For this case, it is technology. Technology is very, I wouldn't say rigid, but I can't think of another word at the moment. Rigid or stark, somewhat cold. It's not warm, that's for sure. So you want something that's going to be, let's see if I have Techo. You want something that's going to be very structured as far as a font. So structured font, something that's not too light or not too heavy, that's not too close spacing. That way you can more easily read it and it's practical because technology is practical. Righteous kind of looks very cool in 90s, but I don't think it's right for this. Techo is too close together. I'd rather keep this more to a sans serif than a serif font. A serif font would be nice and classical. However, it has too many ligatures. Oh, there's also Lucida Console. And whenever you're trying to decide between something, it's always good to zoom out and look at it from the preview mode so you can see how well the design is going. Let's put in some information here so I can see how other words had to expand the container box because the container box did not want to expand for me. Boy, either one really works well. I'm liking what OCR is doing. It's just the S's looking like backwards Z's kind of bothers me a little bit. And OCR A extended kind of looks like something that you would see probably from the 90s/early 2000s. Lucida console looks more like 2010 era. Let me pick this one, make a duplication under iPhone SE and put the release date. I always zoom in way too much when it comes to InDesign. Okay, let's just put the release date on here, which was 2016, March 31st. And then we'll do the same thing with the other font to see which one we like the best. Lucida console is very similar in style to Futura, so I kind of want more of a contrast. With that being said, I'm going to use the OCR-A extended font. You can find many different versions of this type of font and this style of font. I'm going to go with that one. It's within the style of technology. I'm going to get rid of Lucida console, even though it was a really good contender. Let's add a stroke to this. When it comes to reading fonts are typically between 11 and 12 point size when it comes to just reading. However, since this is going to be on a display case, I can make it a bit larger than that, especially when it comes to headers or titles and such like that. And 16 seems to be pretty much perfect to go underneath iPhone SE here. The iPhone SE font I have as a 48 point size, and I gave plenty of spacing in between both texts. So as you can see, I am working within the preview mode just so I can see how it all works as one piece. I can go back to our normal mode. For the specifications, I want the specifications to also be in a 16 point size. It's going to have a stroke on it as well of rich black. I think I did a 0.3 stroke size since this font does not have a medium or a bold option to it. So specifications. There is a handy trick that you can use when it comes to lining up text within InDesign. That is here underneath the paragraph options in the properties panel. It is the align to baseline grid or do not align to baseline grid. So basically the baseline grid is invisible. You can showcase it if you want, but I find it very distracting. When it's not aligned to the baseline grid, it can go wherever you want it to go. But when you align it, it aligns it and snaps it to the next line in the grid, which is not visible. And by grid, I mean like the square grid. There we go. So it snaps it into place so that everything lines up. So we have this nice balance going on within the piece, from side to side and top to bottom, because we have this big central image. It is the thing that is being emphasized. It's central right there. Since we have a massive image on the top here, we're going to put all of our information down here at the bottom to kind of balance it out. I did have this little A9 chip down here as well to balance out the top. You have not only an image taking up the top half of the page, but you also have these three smaller images plus this massive text box that I'm going to put in here, fill it with placeholder text to see what the entire thing will look like with everything filled up with information. It'll look similarly to this once I have all the information in it, so you have the balance going on. There's quite a bit of movement happening through this piece, from the title up here, moving over to this image of the iPhone lifting up off the page, continuing going this way, and all this information down here. So it's kind of going almost in a zigzag pattern. Emphasis is the image, order of hierarchy, the title, the images, and the specific information down here. Now all we have to do is just plug and chug information. Let's modify this information here. This was just our placeholder text. We do not need it. So there is our information. View it and preview. This is very clean. I like how minimalistic and how clean it is. Now we're going to move on for iPhone XR. We can take a lot of this and duplicate it over because I want a very similar setup. Select the text boxes, press Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V if you're on a Mac. Let's change this to XR. How many of you had the iPhone SE, the iPhone X, the iPhone XR? Let me know in the comments down below. So this one was released in September of 2018, and then we can add our images in here. The differences that we have for these two designs is the layout. So for the layout for the XR, we can do something like this, where everything resembles the columns that they take up. One column, two columns, one column. All the information stays up at towards the top. A big emphasis on these two central images, which is reminiscent of what we did over here. But instead of having information down at the bottom, we have it over here to the side. I will continue to put more information in here. And then two small images balancing out the bottom corners. All the information I'm going to continue to plug in here. And instead of having it as a horizontal orientation of information, we have a vertical orientation of information. By the way, if any of you did not know, you can find all this information on the back of the box. But I found that very fascinating. I'm like, oh, there's lots of information here. If you hit tab, it will jump it a certain number of pixels. I believe the base is 10 pixels. I could be wrong because I've changed mine, but I think it starts off with 10 pixels. I have like all my notes written on a little notepad here because there was no way I was going to memorize this. If you are doing a design, if it's more image heavy and less text heavy, you can space out the leading in between lines of text to make it a little bit wider. So that way you have more white space if you want more white space. I'm keeping it a little bit more constrained down. So that way it reads more like a technical information pamphlet would read. I guess this is going to be on like a big display, so it doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't need to have that much space. Sometimes I like to design in preview mode just so I can see spatially how it's working without all the extra stuff in it. Here's specifications lined up to the baseline over here on the left with release 2018 September. And then below that, I gave a bit of white space for all of this technical information. It managed to line up beautifully with the image over here. I'm not too fussed about the top of the image being taller than specifications. I mean, I can bump this down a little bit. There we go. Preview mode. That looks so nice. I can even make this smaller for the sake of balance because I don't want this to fight too much with this up here. If you squint, like if you're in preview mode and you squint and look at your design, you can see what is unbalanced or what's not working well. You can have something very similar to each other, but also very different. So these are both showcasing different iPhones and the technological specs of them. A lot of central imagery happening here with one column, two columns, one column. Everything lined up to each other. Plus we have this nice balance from the top having so much white space around with all the information being at the bottom, but nothing's fighting too much with anything else. We have this nice balance from left to right. And then as we go over here to the iPhone XR, again, one column, two columns, one column, central images here, which are not too large. They stay within the column grids here. So you can literally see 1, 2, and 1. There's plenty of white space throughout the piece, allows it to be extremely well balanced, plus two smaller items down here to make sure that the amount of information that's at the top is not unweighted towards the bottom. Here is our design. They are related, however, they are also different. You can create very minimal pieces that have a lot of impact. And then once these are in their display cases, they're going to be really beautiful to have up on the wall. I hope you all learned a little bit more about the principles of graphic design between hierarchy, emphasis, contrast. Our contrast was black and white here with a little bit of color secondary, being able to bring everything up together in unity, as well as showcasing emphasis in certain areas. I kept it very simple with the emphasis being in the center, but you can create your emphasis anywhere you want on page. If you are using different fonts, try not to use more than 3. And when it comes to sizing, try not to use more than 3 sizes on one piece because then it kind of just gets a little hectic. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. See you soon, creatives.